Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next panel, Renewing Professional Writing.
Warfighting is the Army Chief of Staff's top focus area. Around us, everything we can see here is really driving us at these material solutions. Right? We got like a Bradley turret, we got some drones, we got an armored dozer back there. But what I'm going to talk about today is for the price of one Bradley Power Pack, we're driving change in how the Army thinks and transforms. If you do one thing today, what I ask is that you visit the line of departure, which is this website here. I'll come back to this several times, but this is our new web-first, mobile-friendly platform for the Army's journals so that we can reach all the way from AUSA to that scrolling soldier in line at the shopette right now. I am Lieutenant Colonel Zach Griffiths, and I'm a Special Assistant to the Chief of Staff and the Director of the Harding Project to Renew Professional Military Writing. Professional writing we define as the system of Army branch journals that are out there. I'm a Special Forces officer, and so for me it's special warfare. Colonel Schmidt here on the panel, he's an air defender. Air defense is out of Fort Sill. We also got Emily, who's a civil affairs officer with special warfare, and General Beagle came up in the infantry out of Fort Moore. We are going to have a great panel today. I'm going to provide a quick overview of our work. I'm going to turn it to Colonel Schmidt, who is going to give you a live tour of the line of departure, which is that new web platform I talked about. We're then going to turn it to Major Lopez, and she is going to talk about being a Harding Fellow and what that means for our Army. Then P.W. Singer, noted author and managing partner of Useful Fiction, is going to talk about how he is working with the Chief of Staff to bring FM 3.0 to life. And then lastly, we'll turn it to Lieutenant General Beagle, the commander of the Combined Arms Center, who will close us out with some thoughts on renewing professional writing in the Army. So our Army's journals serve 5 important functions. First, they let senior leaders communicate to all of us. A year ago, General George, General Brito, and SMA Weimer wrote an article in the Modern War Institute calling to renew our professional discourse. Right? That sent a signal to all of us that our senior leaders cared about this important issue, and that's why we're talking about it again today. These journals also let people communicate up. Many of us, especially in the junior ranks, may have ideas that our immediate chain of command can't solve. A great example is an article published last year on tracking foreign disclosure officers. A FAO was trying to find some. They had no centralized way to track them. His boss couldn't help, right? Like as a battalion commander, I can't solve this problem. It takes the Army G1 to do it. But because he put pen to paper and wrote that article, the G1 got it, established an OPT, and then developed an additional skill identifier so we can track them. Right, that change matters, and that captain took several hours to write that, solved an important problem for the Army. They also let us communicate laterally and develop communities of interest. For example, additive manufacturing is really hot some places and not others. I know as a detachment commander, I missed opportunities, but we found, the Chief of Staff found Sergeant First Class Marcel Blood, who's our incoming Deputy Director of the Harding Project, who wrote about additive manufacturing and can contribute to this discussion across the Army, even though in one site you might not find enough people to form a critical mass. They also let us find inspiration from the past. Armor started as cavalry in 1888. In the 130 years since, the Army has felt many of the same problems. These are related to manning, equipping, and transforming, and so we can draw inspiration from them. And then lastly, writing helps us become better communicators. Whether it's being evaluated on your writing at CAP, or the daily emails you send, or the briefings like this that you give, speech and clear communication is incredibly important in this human business. So, quickly on the things we're doing at the Harding Project, we are focused on accessibility and quality. We're about to get a website demo, so I won't belabor that point. We're also going to hear from Emily about the staffing. One person I did want to highlight, though, is we have our partners here from the Defense Technical Information Center that are helping us unlock those archives and make them accessible, enrich them with metadata so you can find them in Google Scholar and other ways so we can unlock those insights from the past. On the education front, we're not going to touch too much on, but we are making sure that at every level of PME, folks are getting into these journals, understanding they exist, and then hopefully learning to contribute. And then finally, outreach is our last area. We've got 12 Harding Fellows, and if you as a unit want to stand up a unit writing program or do a leader development session, you should contact a Harding Fellow and invite them. Also contact me. I'm happy to participate. But for those who needed a product, you all now have a special issue of Military Review focused on professional military writing. This is written by people with experience, how to write an article, how to run a unit writing program, all these very tactical guides that can help you get started. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it to Colonel Schmidt, who's going to walk us through the line of departure. Sir.
Thanks, Zach. And welcome, everyone. Almost good afternoon. Before I walk you through and give you a demonstration of the line of departure, I want to give you a little context of why we created this website. So for the last 30, 40 years, much like the uniform that I'm wearing, our branch journals were a little out of date. And we needed to make sure that we were getting away from this kind of languishing pattern where we were publishing less often. The branch journals were publishing in PDF. They were, the websites weren't very modern or user-friendly, and we wanted to change that, make them accessible to everyone, but also under one umbrella, allowing for that cross-fertilization of ideas, so folks that may just be going to their own home branch journal might see articles that come on the front page that interest them from other branches. And so I'm going to take you through that website. There's a little bit of the context why we did this, and we're pretty excited about it. First, the website, the direction to us was make it web first, mobile friendly. We call it 508 compliant, which means it's accessible to folks with disabilities. I'll walk you through that in a second. But we also wanted current, relevant, important content because, as Zach mentioned, this concept of the scrolling soldier, we know that soldiers want to be able to find new content on a daily, weekly basis, not just finding their branch journal maybe on a quarterly basis in a PDF, maybe semi-annually, in some cases even annually. We wanted that content to be current and relevant to where they're at today. So when you go to our website, if you had a chance to capture that QR code, it'll be back up later. It'll take you to this website. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner that it is publicly accessible. It's not hidden behind a CAC. That was very important. You see the .mil address, which means it lets you know that you're on an official government website. You can also see the Army branding there as well. And then if you were to click down, and you can follow the cursor as my driver in the back kind of helps guide you through, you can also see kind of the official website of the United States government drop down that gives you a little bit more detail. The branding and logo of the line of departure always takes the user back to the home page, of course. Scroll down a little. All the featured articles. So these featured articles, what I think is really cool about the site, they're informed by the Chief of Staff of the Army's recommended monthly articles. So those articles that he's reading, that he's recommending, they populate here. But as time goes on, as we continue to update the website, what you'll see are articles just by the end of this week. We got a call. The infantry commandant wants 2 articles up on his infantry journal website on line of departure. We'll have those up by the end of the week. But these articles are informed by senior leaders what they're hoping folks might be interested in reading. Scroll down a little bit more. Once you get down to the articles, just for convenience for our users, we wanted to let them know, like, you know, I'm standing in line, I only have about 10 minutes, I'm sitting here reading, or I'm at the airport. You have your read times. That gives you an idea of how long the article may be. Scroll down. You can see which journal it's at by the button. If you were to select that button, it would take you to that branch's journal's website. But let's click on the article. Takes you to the Special Warfare landing page for the Special Warfare Journal, and you have a new set of menu options. We were talking earlier about archives. One of the things we want to make sure that we're cleaning up and modernize, not just our branch journals and websites, but also our archives, making those more optimized for search and research. So you can find your archives within that journal specifically. You can find, if you want to contribute, you can find the writing submission guidelines for that specific journal. You'll see what's trending, so you'll understand what are your peers reading, what are they accessing, what are they thinking is important or interesting. And then the audio articles. If you were to click on that audio article button, it would take to an entire list of articles that are in audio. What that's important for is if you don't have time to read it, but you might want to listen to it while you're on, in a PT session or you're driving down the road, you're more interested in maybe kind of a podcast type format. These audio files allow you to access the articles through that venue. some of you might be, you know what? I'm not down with this new website. I kind of like the old classic version. We can take you back off the site to your classic version in case you'd rather access the material there. We also wanted to make sure that it was available in lots of different formats. So here, everything is in what we call HTML, all right? And HTML means that it's optimized for your screen size. So if you're on your cell phone, you're on a tablet, you're on a laptop, the screen of the website or the face of the website expands and contracts in accordance with the format that you're using. But we know that sometimes we'll find an article, we want to print it off. We can print it off either in HTML, we can download the PDF, share it that way, and we can also share on social media, as well as email. You'll see this number here, digital object identifier. That goes to what we were talking about in terms of making our articles search engine optimized, SEO, as well as making sure that they have the metadata that make them more searchable or findable in our archives. All right, scroll back up and hit the line of departure homepage. That was just an example from Special Warfare. If you go to the menu, the hamburger, go to journals. Here's where you'll find the complete menu of all the branch journals. We know we still have, every day we're continuing to improve and update and add content as each branch journal and their Harding Fellow recommend articles to be updated. We'll take that, they drop it into an MS Teams hub. Our team then takes that, makes sure that it's properly formatted, and it gets added to the website. Go back to the hamburger. Click it again. So, yeah, close journals. Writer's Compass. The Writer's Compass allows you to find submission guidelines for Army University Press and Military Review. The Special Features button, which will continue to grow and develop, will take you to the CSA's recommended articles. Yesterday, the Sergeant Major of the Army talked about his Muddy Boots program. That takes you to those articles. You'll soon be able to find many of our articles in the DTIC archive, but click on the podcast, please. So in addition to being able to download all of our articles on all of our journals in audio format, you can also find podcasts that you might find interesting as well. And we provide a selection or a menu of those podcasts that have affiliated and that we want to help maybe steer people towards. All right. Quick down and dirty, that's the website. The team at Army University Press, I think, did a tremendous job pulling this together. Michael Saravo, one of our teammates who's not here today, him and his team really did some yeoman's work, I think, in getting this stood up in about 6 months. And we couldn't have done it without the assistance, the cooperation, and the collaboration of all the Army's branches. So every branch helped us, provided us with their branding, provided us with their content, and it was really a great team effort. That's it for me. I'm going to pass the mic to Major Emily Lopez, one of our Harding Fellows.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Major Emily Lopez, a Civil Affairs Officer and proud Harding Fellow for the Special Warfare Journal, working at the Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Liberty, North Carolina. As a Harding Fellow, my primary role is to serve as the military editor-in-chief alongside my counterpart, my NCO counterpart of the Special Warfare Journal, which is the branch journal for civil affairs, psychological operations, and special forces MOSs. The ultimate goal at Special Warfare under the Harding Project is to really increase the readership and the authorship of those writing in to get after the Chief of Staff of the Army's initiatives of reinvigorating professional writing and discourse, and for us specifically amongst the RSOF community. Something that I want to highlight, and I think why having a military member as a Harding Fellow is so critical. I don't know if people know here what a typical staff looks like for a journal like this, but it is typically an all civilian staff, and they are wonderful at their job, and I am honored to be a part of our team. But I think as a Harding Fellow and being that green suitor on the team, we kind of bring the connective tissue to the operational force. And I think that's what's so powerful about being in this position. And it's not only being that connective tissue, but we're really trying to bridge the gap from our centers of excellence to those line units. And that looks like publishing relevant content that answers the mail for both sides. The most fun and rewarding part of my job is working with my counterpart with these young authors, aspiring authors, or sometimes seasoned authors. We're there with them from the inception of an idea. We work through the sometimes tedious process of editing, and then you kind of feel the joy with them when you hit the publish and you get to talk to them about it afterwards. There are 4 primary pillars under the Harding Project: education, modernization, stewardship, and archive. I think at Special Warfare, we've really tried to attack in the first 90 days the education pillar. And what that's looked like for us is getting out to the various PME institutions, our professional military education venues at Fort Liberty. So we've got our warrant officer course, our NCO Academy. You've got your special operations captain's career course, so young captains that are just coming to the branch. And then we've also got our 3 qualification courses, MOSs. So what we're trying to do in these courses, most of you are familiar, you have a writing assignment. So we thought, why not make this a writing assignment that can be publishable to their branch journal, or that can be pushed as a rolling publication to the line of departure. So that's really where myself and my counterpart have put most of our time into. And I think the next thing we're really going to try to tackle is the modernization piece. How do we move from a strictly print version to make it web first, mobile friendly? And I know there's a big ask from senior leaders to how do we get this in digital content, podcast form, so that you can listen on your commute to work. For those of us that live around the Fort Liberty area, you got at least 45 minutes one way. So podcasts would be perfect for that. I'd like to, the second half of this, go over who should apply to be a Harding Fellow and why I think it's very important for leaders to encourage their soldiers to do so. So who? We're looking for those motivated KD complete captains, master sergeants to sergeant majors that have been to MLC, and then our CW 3s and 4s that have been to their warrant officer advanced course. Another powerful aspect of this is that we want to have NCOs and warrant officers in these billets. It's frankly a part of our population that I think, it's been thought for a long time that only officers write, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So I'm proud to have an NCO on my team, and we're really trying to shift the paradigm on that. It'd also be nice if who you choose, they have a proclivity for writing, journalism, and a passion for the editing process. Strong communication skills, both written and oral. I think a big part of this job, especially the first year, is really outreach and advocating for what the Harding Project does. And then finally, we need people who are willing to lead a multifaceted team. Like I said, we're the only 2 mil personnel on our team, so being able to do that successfully. Now, why I think becoming a Harding Fellow is important. One, it is now an official Army broadening opportunity, so you will apply through HRC like you would any other broadening opportunity. You're going to get an expedited year-long master's degree from the University of Kansas in journalism and mass communication. And then following that, you'll PCS. Each Harding Fellow will PCS to their Center of Excellence and serve as a fellow for their branch journals for 2 years. So this first assignment is just a year, and honestly, it's not enough time. So having them in the seat for 2 years to really implement these changes. And then the last thing I'll say is being a Harding Fellow, I really feel the backing of the Chief of Staff of the Army and also our commanding general at the Special Warfare Center and School to go after these initiatives. I sat here yesterday and listened to a Warriors Corner innovation panel with the AUSA SOC commander, Lieutenant General Braga, and he talked about the pen versus the sword, how there's always this fight between the two. And he said ultimately the pen prevails, and I feel like as a Harding Fellow that I'm on that winning team. So thank you very much, and I'll pass it over to Mr. P.W. Singer.
So thank you very much. It's an incredible honor to be able to join not just this panel of leaders, but to be at AUSA. I'm the son of an Army officer, so growing up wouldn't have dreamed of being here talking to a group like you. Next slide, please. There's a double challenge that every organization faces, whether it's a business to a military unit. as it faces with the kind of topics and technologies and threats that consume this convention floor right now. The first is the challenge of understanding. You have to be able to identify and frame the new ideas, the new technologies, the new processes, the new opportunities. But there's a second challenge that we don't focus in on enough, which is how to communicate the new and thus often disruptive idea to our key target audiences. And that task is one of not just how do you explain, but how do you gain and retain attention when so much else is competing for it, whether it's all the other publications out there, to what's in their email inbox, to just the scarce resource of time. Next slide. So we know what does not work all that great. It's the strategy paper that leaves us stupefied. Next slide. It's the PowerPoint that leaves us mystified. And apology if the creator of this is in the room. Next slide. But there is something that does work that we feel isn't used enough, which is literally the oldest communication technology of all, story, which we've been using to share ideas since we were gathered around fires in a cave. Next slide. And there's multiple attributes of story that you can apply to your task. And to be clear, story can be a fictional scenario, or it can be something that is true, an experience from your own life, or something from back in history. So the attributes range from narrative is a more effective means of communicating new, complex ideas. The research shows that your brain reacts to it in a way that typically shooting PowerPoints at people like a machine gun doesn't work. In fact, if you are exposed to a memo, a PowerPoint like this, one part of your brain is lighting up right now. If you engage with a story, 4 parts of your brain are lighting up. Second, narrative brings in emotion, and emotion is more likely to lead to action. We like to think that we're purely logical beings, but again, whether it is in military behavior, voting behavior, to whether you bought that used car or not, emotion is often what drove the sale. And that emotion that you can be strategic with might be a fear of a scenario, missing out, something that you don't want to have happen. Or it can be an emotion of happiness or greed. I want to see that come true. A third attribute is change management. Change management programs are more likely to succeed when you're able to tell the story of why we need to change, tell the story of what success will look like, what we're headed towards, and most importantly, you're able to tell your organization you are characters, you are heroes in this story of change rather than victims of it. Because often in bureaucracies, some people will see themselves as a character, a victim in a story of change, and they'll fight a bureaucratic insurgency against it. And then finally is the idea of the ask of narrative is not just an easier pathway. If you're stuck in traffic, we should compare the traffic between Fort Liberty and Washington, D.C., but asking someone to read a memorandum versus enjoying a narrative, again, whether it's a history or whether it's something fictional, is an easier ask. But the second thing is, one lesson that we've learned in everything from marketing to information warfare is that your goal, if you're truly successful, is to turn your target audience from a target into part of your distribution team. You want to drive things viral. Next slide, please. And so that's why we're excited to announce today Task Force Talon, which is a useful fiction project designed to leverage these attributes in support of the Army and some of its key documents. Next slide, please. And so you've got the handouts there, first out, only available here. And basically the project concept is that as the U.S. Army transforms towards the future, we'll be deploying this oldest communication technology of all, story. And we're going to use the format of a novel to share the real world lessons from Field Manual 3.0, as well as lessons learned from contemporary conflicts and recent Army exercises and training. There'll be more to come about this project in the months ahead, but what we can share with you is the synopsis and an excerpt which is available in your chairs there, which for those that don't have it accessible, the synopsis of the story is that U.S. Army Major Derek Washington has just arrived in an allied country to join his new unit when he is unexpectedly thrown into command amidst a large-scale combat operation. As his unit faces overwhelming odds and new threats ranging from cyber attacks to drone strikes, he must learn both how to lead under fire and how to win the kind of war that the U.S. has not fought for generations. And so in closing, I want to thank everyone that's been involved in this project and helping to make it happen, from General George all the way down to young leaders. And one of the exciting things for us is that we've been able to speak with them and gain their insights and lessons, which are being built into the final product. So thank you again.
Thanks, PW. So good afternoon, everybody. Zach gave me the hard task of trying to recap all of what you heard already. I'm Lieutenant General Beagle, Command the Combined Arms Center. And I'll start with a quote. Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. But we don't really have that problem in the Army. We have a lot of people in our Army, from Army civilian professionals to soldiers at private, that understand things very well. So what is the problem? They don't want to write about it. The fear of writing, or the ability to share what they write, because I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be looked at as that person that does not demonstrate clear and concise thinking. But that is part of what we have to do in our Army to spark professional dialogue and discourse. Discourse within our Army happens outside of our Army. Part of the intent with the chief is to bring that discourse back inside of our Army. The great thing about writing is good writing is good thinking, and vice versa. And also, writing does not have a rank. But many will think, I can't write because of a certain rank. I can't write because I'm in a certain position. Good writing is clear thinking, and good writing does not have a rank. So part of this entire effort, everything that you heard today, is to get all of our Army to read and write. We talk a lot about writing here, but I like, PW, at your point, the link to doctrine. We publish tons of doctrine out of Fort Leavenworth, 337 doctrinal publications. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand because I kind of know what the answer would be. Have you read doctrine lately? Right? But we've got to pull people in to understand our profession and, oh, by the way, understand our professional language. That is how we communicate in our Army. We buy equipment, as you see here. We fight formations at echelon. But we also speak from a common language. So part of the effort here that Zach, from his idea, a lot of the team out at Fort Leavenworth, inside the building, have put behind putting this in place is to free up our force to feel free to write and share, but to bring that into our own spaces where we do that as professionals amongst the profession. That is key to the Harding Project, to the line of departure, to make things a little bit easier. So there's some barriers that we do have to break. And part of it you've already heard. I'm not going to recap points that were brought about up here, is we have to meet people where they are. It goes back to my point. Writing does not have a rank. In terms of the editors, what do the editors bring to the table? If your thinking is not as clear as you would like it to be, your writing is not as perfect as you want it to be, there's someone there to help you. That was a point brought up with the editors. So we have the Harding Fellows. Again, another great opportunity so we can help ourselves discover the greatness in the thinking that we have in our Army, being able to have professional dialogue and discourse across our Army, which gets us into a cycle. We write, we read, we think, we discuss, and we write again. That is a perfect loop. And part of what we do not want to do, and I've said this to Zach many times, we do not want to have this conversation 20 years from now. If you remember the points Zach brought up, there was a great spark in terms of all of our writing, how it used to be done. Back in the early times, you can read about our Army and things that occurred. All of it was an agreement. There was a lot of disagreement, which is healthy, respectful and healthy. And that's what we need in our force currently, given where we are in time and what we need to do to innovate our forces, the threats that we see around the globe. We need that debate. There's always a difference of opinion. There's always a difference of perspective. But your perspective has to be heard. And we have to move people from behind that barrier of fear. I don't want to write. My thinking may not be where I need it to be, but there's a team, there's people to help so that you can share that amongst others. At echelon, by formation, by rank, it really doesn't matter. But we need to do that better. And if we get this started the right way, we get everybody to contribute, go to the line of departure, understand what we have next door at their booth, read through some of the articles. It tells you how to start a program inside of your unit. Very easy. As a battalion commander, it was very easy for me to start a writing program. I would leave at night, walk by staff duty. Here's a paper. I want you to write me something by the time I return in the morning for PT. Very easy to start a writing program. But then I would look at it, but it would not be to judge that soldier. Not to judge you, go, that's pretty good thinking. That is something we can actually use in the formation. And as a battalion commander, a lot of what we did, a lot of what we learned came from the power within the formation. So if we don't expand that across our force, there's a lot that we're leaving, as they say, on the cutting room floor because it's all here. But we have to break those barriers. So one, appreciate all of you being here. Zach, I'll stop at that point. Turn it over to you for Q&A.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for coming out and for those great remarks. This is what you get, the eloquence from writing over many years. General Beagle, thank you for that. I'd love questions from the floor for any of the panelists for me.
Thank you. Good morning. Master Anderson, USARC Command G1. So what are you all, since I heard the say that, writers are irrespective of ranks, what efforts are being put forth toward the advertisement of the Harding Project and the professional program to the NCO Corps as a whole? I can honestly say I went to MLC last year, and from my experience, I see that this is something that's greatly needed in the Corps. But I don't necessarily hear about it. I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever heard about it. And I've heard the Harding Project like 6 times since I've been here. So what advertisement efforts are being put forth toward the NCO Corps as a whole to brighten, the knowledge of this and the openness for NCOs to participate?
Thanks for that question. Yesterday, SMA Weimer launched the Muddy Boots. Can you pull it up off the website? But this is really like his flagship effort to have the nominative sergeants major lead the way on professional writing in the Army. And so every 2 weeks, a senior non-commissioned officer will write and really solicit feedback, right? So SMA's article calls for feedback on his thing and for you to write in response. So that's one way. And then across all NCO PME, we've instituted a citation requirement where for at least one of the essays at every level of PME, NCOs will be required to cite from a professional journal. And so the intent there is just to, at a low cost, get you to cite, I don't know your branch, but, say from infantry, right? From armor, from Army sustainment. Just at every touch you're getting re-blued that these exist and provide useful resources for you. And then lastly, my deputy director, Sergeant First Class Summerun, is on his way out. Sergeant First Class Blood, right there. Raise your hand. Right, he's on the team, and he's there to make sure that, this is an equal task, right, for officers and NCOs as we go forward. Does that answer your question, Master Sergeant? Thank you.
Hey, Zach, can I tag on to that?
Yeah.
You may not always hear about the Harding Project with the Harding Project logo or the Harding Project brand. You might hear about the principles of the Harding Project through the NCO Journal.
Yes.
So, for example, the NCO Journal has been very prolific. We have, over the last year, and this includes both Military Review and the NCO Journal, we've had an increase in submissions of 47-48%, and we've doubled our publication specifically with NCOs in the NCO Journal. And then we also work with those NCO authors to turn their articles into a podcast, and we've been working really closely with the Sergeant Majors Academy on this. I think Zach mentioned that they started their own scholars program, the Optimus Scholars Program at the Sergeant Majors Academy. So there's a lot that you're seeing that kind of falls under the banner of the Harding Project, although you might not hear that name.
Sure. Thanks to you and the team. I think this is a great conversation. Anything that we can do to foster professional discourse, I think, is good for our formation. I've got a concern, though. When we talk about the Harding Project, when I listen to you talk about your loop, that discussion piece is what I focus on. We're looking to foster professional discourse. My concern is because we're pushing so hard toward the writing, we're going back to a day when there was lots of really good discourse that was happening and innovation was coming from out in the field. I'm worried that we're potentially going down a path where we're going to have the same problem that we have with our streaming services today. We're creating tons of content, but we're not doing anything to foster that professional discourse that's critical to the being able to write again that you discussed. So what do you see, Zach, you can take this, or someone from the panel, what are we doing to ensure that the discussion, the discourse is happening and we're just not increasing the volume of writing that we're receiving?
I'll start. Quality really is key to this. And so part of the reason we put the Harding Fellows there is to make sure that the content comes in and is selected for publication is of high quality and not just of high volume. So that's one. I know you also studied letters to the editor at various journals. And so we hope, we do not yet have an answer to the kind of thoughtful comments because, right, comment boards can become very toxic. I think we all know this. And so there's just this tension between, creating open comments and what we like to call thoughtful comments. And so we're trying to figure out a little bit, how does the moderation work, or how do we get that, allow people to respond and build on these ideas without leading to kind of a toxic area. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if anyone else from the panel has thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Sure.
The only thing I'll add is, it's incumbent on leaders as well, right? But again, it depends on where you sit. A lot of people wouldn't consider themselves a leader. When I look across this room, there's a lot of leaders in this room, and it's not always based on rank. But it is to get us to that point of how do we just not have a lot of content that we've done nothing with? That's the place that we don't want to be. But when you know the content is there, it's incumbent upon all of us to go, hey, what did you think about this article? I just share it with Colonel Smith, and then we have a discussion about it. It's very simple. It's not, this huge mountain that we all have to climb, but just share what you have. Try to spark the debate. You can do that in your training meeting, and especially if you're in charge of a formation, right? It only takes you a little bit of time, which is the other barrier. Two things that we do not want to give up, in our day-to-day life, is time, right? We don't want to give up our time. In some cases, we don't want to give up our thoughts. These are my thoughts. These are not your thoughts, and I don't want to share. But that's two things you have to give up in terms of writing. I have to give up my time, and I have to give up my thoughts. But I know I'm not going to get judged based on my thoughts. And when we discuss it, it's okay. It is more about facts and feelings, and we have to help ourselves understand our ability to communicate with our force, to take those great ideas that are here and not just put them somewhere, in a repository that we don't get to and then complain about it is not helpful. There's two things that we can do, but we can't do them at the same time. We can wring our hands or we can roll up our sleeves. What we're asking you to do with the Harding Project is roll up your sleeves. Don't wring your hands about it. There may be a ton of stuff on line of departure. Direct people to it. What did you think about that? We do it on social media. If you see a post, hey, what did you think about General Beagle's post on X? I don't know. What did you think? And you're going to discuss it. Mildly interesting, right? But if I put something there worth discussing, I want you to discuss that. And if that leads to an article, awesome. If it leads to a bigger discussion, awesome. If it leads to something that helps us learn as a force, great, even better. That is the mountain we're trying to climb with professional dialogue and discourse. I'm a little bit passionate, sorry.
Hey, good morning. Hey, I'm Dr. Myers from ACC Orlando. So thank you for putting this panel on. A lot of times we don't have conversations about writing and creativity. So when I think about my question is, I sit here and listen. We talk about innovation, we talked about directing creativity, and we know we can't do that, right? There's no way you can direct or order somebody or command somebody to create. So I guess my question would be for the Harding Project and the different writing efforts you're doing, what other things are you looking to do at the tactical level, at the soldier level, to get them involved? Even just listen to what General Beagle just said. Think about like the Veterans Project. They want stories, to go back to what Mr. Singh was saying. They want stories. So even starting at the lowest level, asking soldiers to write their story as maybe a starting project. Write your story. How did you come into the military? What got you to this point, right? So my main suggestion is to really thinking about scaling it, but scaling it from the lower level, figuring out how to get people engaged.
Yeah, thanks for that question. We have identified a little bit of a gap that remains to be filled, which is really at that lowest barrier to entry, to your point. The Australians actually have a really great platform called The Cove, that has great participation from very junior leaders. And so as we continue to look forward, that's an area that we may see for improvement is kind of, how do you let a team leader who just got back from jungle school offer thoughts on his experience or her experience? So thank you for that question.
Hey, Zach, just to add on to that, it's about incentivizing, right? It's not about just telling people what to do or, leading them to water and hoping that it's a drink. You got to incentivize it. And I think, what we discovered in this process, one was that when you ask soldiers to write, they want to know that you're reading it, not that they're just writing because you told them to do it. They want to know that their commander or whoever's telling them to do it, that they read it, they have a conversation. Maybe they get a paper back with some feedback, or they have an opportunity to have lunch with that commander to talk about their article. When they get that kind of interaction, that's an incentive. There's also other programs that have just kicked off within the last 6 months. I know that I-Corps has a writing program. I know that 4th Infantry Division is standing up a writing program with the Green Pen Award. And so letting soldiers know that, hey, the command, the leaders, the team has an interest in what you have to say. It's about incentivizing it, not just telling people what to do.
All right, that concludes our time. And I want to thank everyone for coming. If you do one thing, right, like get this QR code on your phone, visit the line of departure, and then get a habit. Check it. We're going to be publishing rolling content. I'll be over at our kiosk, which is just around the corner, if anyone has any follow-up questions. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. And thanks to my great panelists for being here. Thank you.